Miami Hurricanes will be taking on the Pittsburgh Panthers at noon o'clock Saturday. I got, once again, on for the third week in a row, Alex, a.k.a. 247 Canes. Man, he is putting in the work. Long hours, doing his homework on every opponent we face every game week. We got the Pittsburgh Panthers. As a program, Miami, when they get one loss, it usually comes in consecutive losses. Can we answer with a statement win against the Pittsburgh Panthers? 247 Canes believes he has that answer. Alex, thank you so much for coming on the show, man. I greatly appreciate it. Another week to have you on, man. It truly is an honor. And you're doing the work, man. You're putting in the long hours of, every position breakdown for the Pittsburgh Panthers.
You got it, Paul. It's a three-peat and a very good three-peat. I would love to come on here saying that we're undefeated, but that's not the case. But we have an opportunity here, and I thank you for having me on the show.
Absolutely, Alex. And, how does Pittsburgh match up in this game? We're seeing Mark Whipple, our former offensive coordinator under Randy Shannon. We're seeing a veteran ACC quarterback in Kenny Pickett. They have a very good playmaker in Paris Ford. Offensively, what do they bring to the table, and what should we expect?
Okay, awesome. That's an awesome question to ask. Since you did mention Mark Whipple, let me just say he's been around the NFL. He's seen NFL defenses. So he's been around the block, and he knows a lot of things. And he knows how to utilize his playmakers and put him in a position to win. So is this going to be an easy victory? It's not. Hopefully it doesn't turn out to be a loss. But just to dive into the question that you asked me, let's start with Kenny Pickett, the quarterback. All right, how do we match up against him? Well, what do we know? He's a veteran quarterback, so he's not going to make that many mistakes. All right, Kenny Pickett coming into the year has thrown for 8 touchdowns. He has 3 interceptions, and he also has 5 rushing touchdowns. Now, the thing that impresses me the most about Kenny Pickett is that he isn't afraid to attack you vertically, and he has the arm to do it. He also has good accuracy to place the ball. He isn't no Trevor Lawrence, but don't take it lightly. He's a very capable quarterback. I've seen his stats. I've seen the film on him, and he's very capable of beating you with his arm or with his legs. Once again, he will extend drives and he will run for first downs. So you cannot, as a defense, you cannot take your eyes off of him. And to just break it down a little further, these are some interesting things that I've noticed from Kenny Pickett. He loves the middle of the field. I mean, I tweeted it out on Twitter for whoever follows me, and I also tagged you, Paul. And we noticed, where does Kenny Pickett like to throw? He's very comfortable in that pocket. He's kept clean a lot, and he throws in the middle of the field. He lives in between the numbers. He's thrown 8 touchdowns, and 5 of them have come in between the numbers, whether that's 20 yards, 10 yards, or at the line of scrimmage or a screen. Whatever it is, he loves throwing down the middle of the field. So I look for Miami to at least try to challenge that and force everything outside. Now, obviously, every quarterback to start off the game, they might, Mark Whipple might do some quick throws out to the running back or, set some quick screens, maybe send a couple guys in motion just to create some confusion, because I've seen that a lot from Pitt this year. They create a lot of confusion on defenses just by sending guys in motion and even getting their wide receivers involved in the run game. But since we're talking about Kenny Pickett, let me tell you a little bit more. His average time to throw is 2.81 seconds. All right, that's the second highest in the ACC by less than 1/100th of a second. Okay, the other guy that has that much time is the guy from Boston College. Now, I'm not going to say his name because I'll probably mispronounce it, and this is a video about Pitt. Another thing that I've noticed is 605 yards out of the 1,300, almost 1,400 that he's thrown this year for yards, is throws beyond 20 yards. So most of his – excuse me, go ahead.
No, I'm saying, oh, boy. I mean, we give up a lot of chunk plays on the run. In general as well, we've been having a tough time. I mean, could this be a problem against Miami secondary?
It can be, but we have more answers to their offense than they have for our defense. I'm just gonna put it out that way. I mean, 791 yards that he's thrown for has been in between the numbers. Like I said, he loves the middle of the field. His go-to guys are a freshman, Jordan Addison. Okay, he's a very capable receiver. He's accounted for over 40 targets of his. So, Kenny Pickett is a guy that can beat you. So, let me also divulge into something that everybody loves to hear and I love to hear. Okay. How has he done against the blitz this year? Okay. So this year he's completed over 55% of his passes. He has 3 touchdowns and 2 interceptions. So it is effective if you are able to blitz him effectively and get to him. It does affect him. Okay, that's what's shown. He's 36 out of 65, 3 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. But where I believe Miami can't, be undisciplined and is losing track of him because he will extend the play, and he will run for a first down. So you can't take your eyes off him. You got to pressure him, but you got to make sure you take him down, and you got to make sure you contain him. Another thing, against no pressure means you don't get pressure on him with 4 people or 3, whatever you're rushing, and you just let him pick you apart. He completes 61% of his passes. Okay, 7 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. So with that being said, I mean, Kenny Pickett is a guy that can beat you day in and day out. And if you give him enough time, he will chuck it downfield and their receivers will make a play. So that's, we'll leave it at that. And we will learn what happens.
Alex, how does Pittsburgh's offensive line, since you mentioned Kenny Pickett, when he's pressured, he's not as successful when he has plenty of time in the pocket. How do they stack up against our defensive line? Do you think we have the upper edge in this battle? Is it a complete mismatch, or is it going to be a battle to look out for during this?
Well, that's definitely a key to the game, okay? A key to the game defensively against their offense is, can we pressure him? Can we get to him enough to affect him? Because they're basically one-dimensional, and their O-line in 5 games has allowed only 6 sacks, 3 hits on Kenny Pickett. They have allowed, 42 pressures, which ranks almost dead last in the ACC. But it's just to get to him. I mean, he has so much time in the pocket. If I told you, your quarterback's going to have 3 seconds in the pocket, average, you're gonna make the assessment of Pitt has a pretty good O-line. So this is a game that's gonna be won in the trenches. I know everybody doesn't like to hear that, but it is what it is. We have to win in the trenches defensively in order to limit Pittsburgh. Okay, so their offensive line is pretty good. The time to sack, which is a stat that's kept by a couple of the advanced stats people, kind of surprises me. The time to sack Kenny Pickett is 4.48 seconds. So that's 4.5 seconds it takes for a defensive lineman to get to him. So much film that I've watched. Yeah, so much film that I've watched. NC State, Syracuse, Louisville, and even games from last season. Kenny Pickett is there in a clean pocket, and they'll bring in tight sets, where they add an extra lineman or they add an extra tight end or 2 tight ends just to give them more time if they're being affected by the pass rush. So their O-line is pretty good. The only thing that kind of like gives us an edge, I would say, is in the run game where they're not very successful.
And I think that helps out Miami a lot because, I think teams have put up a lot of rushing yards against us. We saw that with Travis Etienne. We saw that against Louisville. I mean, we've given up a lot of rushing yards. I think Florida State offensively, that was their main, kind of total of offense. Their highlight of their offense, I would say, was running the football. If with George and Travis with the running back.
Correct. So, diving in a little further, the guys that need to really step up in this game are Jalen Phillips, Quincy Roche. Roche is going to definitely have a game. I could see it because their left tackle has given up quite a number of sacks. I don't have that number right in front of me right now, but he is the guy, the matchup to look out for, Roche versus their left tackle. That's Kenny Pickett's blind side. So, I'm just interested in seeing that. And if he takes off for whatever reason, if for some reason any of the players or coaches are listening to me right now, or anybody that is a family member, tell them to go after the ball. This is alarming. This is a red flag. Kenny Pickett has 7 fumbles this season already. 7 fumbles in 5 games. Okay, so if he takes off, tries to get cute, go for the ball. He will fumble. He doesn't have good ball security, and we need to get to him. So, like I said, O-line matchup to watch is going to be that left side with Roche and their left tackle. I look for Roche to have a great game. Nessa Silvera is always there. Jared Harrison, I can't say I can't praise enough. He's going to be a future star, and everybody else in the defensive line just play into the whistle blows, and we should be fine. Their O-line is good, and this battle is going to be won in the trenches. So we need you guys to show up to the game, and not only show up but have an impact in the game.
Alex, I think you mentioned this to me. I think Miami has given up a touchdown every single game to the opposing team's tight end. Am I wrong or right?
Correct. Going back 3 weeks in a row, we have been allowing tight ends to score on us. Now, good news for us Hurricanes fans. The tight end game for Pitt is basically non-existent. Non-existent. There's no tight end that has accounted for more than 50 yards reception out of 5 games in their whole roster. I'm not saying there's not a capable guy out there that could catch the ball. I know they got somebody by the names of Moraga or something like that. He's a pretty big tight end that has, the capability of making catches and being a threat, but they haven't utilized him at all this season, in my opinion. So are we going to make them look like NFL tight ends? We will learn and see from that.
This makes me feel a lot better going into the game. It seems like Miami does have the upper hand, defensively going into this game against their offense. Their left tackle is fairly weak. Our strength is our defensive line. They are non-existent with their tight ends. Brandon Galloway was very affected against Miami, 2 TDs. Like you mentioned, Louisville had a pair of TDs with their tight end as well. Also, their running game, it's like you said, it's not their strongest suit. It's really just, their wide receiver core and Kenny Pickett. I think Miami has the edge defensively. I think Miami will take care of business like we did this past year going to Pitt. Now we still have to play the game, and we'll find out. How up are we for this game, or will we play down to this level? Let's get the turnover chain out. Kenny Pickett, 7 turnovers already as a quarterback. That is awful. Going in with 3 games under his belt, maybe 4. So that is horrendous. Keep in mind, guys, the record, I think they have 2-1 losses in this season. I could be wrong on that stat. I know they have at least 1. So they could be undefeated, Pittsburgh. But right now I think they sit at 2-2. Alex, anything else you want to add before we jump to the defensive side of the football?
Yeah, I want to touch up on their running backs and the receivers real quick. Their running backs, it's basically the Davis guys. They're not related to each other, but they are from Florida. So we all know that Florida, skilled players are capable of, doing their things. But Pitt's run game is so weak that they have to figure out how to get their wide receivers involved and create a bunch of motion and send guys, create deceptive plays basically to get some type of run game going, because it's basically not their strength, and it's also one of the weakest in the ACC. So I don't want to say that that they're non-existent and there's no run game, because they do pose, some threat. But Don't worry, Hurricanes fan. This isn't Travis Etienne in the backfield. This is basically a run game that hasn't been the factor for Pittsburgh. And since Mark Whipple has taken over, they've switched more to the spread offense, and it's more of a passing 60% pass, 40% run type of ordeal. And diving into the receivers, this is a very important thing. Their receivers are pretty balanced in terms of talent and in terms of targets. Their leading guy that is probably the go-to guy, I would say, for Kenny Pickett is Jordan Addison. He has 43 total targets. He's the ACC leading receiver in targets. He's basically their third down guy. There's multiple guys that he has that he could go to third down, but he's basically their special guy. Like I wouldn't say Tutu Atwell, but their go-to. Okay, he accounts for 293 yards of receiving. They also got a guy by the name of Taysir Mack. He's very talented. He missed a couple of games, and he already has 25 targets, 2 touchdowns, and 214 yards. Another guy that they have is DJ Turner. He doesn't start, but he has good production as well. Also accounts for 25 targets, 1 touchdown, and 331 reception yards. And last but not least, they have some guy named Shacky Jack Luis, or something like that. I'm sorry if I'm slaughtering his name. He also accounts for 19 targets. So basically a good balanced receiving core. But I will say that, nice balanced receiving core and all these targets, but they also account for 16 drops. They're one of the receiving core. They have more drop issues than us, basically. So that's favor on our side.
247 Canes. Let's flip over to the defensive side of the football. We're going to start off with their strongest position unit. Pittsburgh, going into this game at defensive line, leads the ACC and ranks second nationally in rushing defense, only allowing just 52 yards per game. Miami's averaging 196.5 yards on the ground, ranked 5th in the ACC and 23rd nationally. Also, Pittsburgh averages 5 sacks per game. I'm telling you, man, that is a matchup to look out for. The battle of the trenches with Pittsburgh defensive line and Miami's offensive line. 247 Canes, what do you think about this?
Absolutely. Like you just said, it's a battle of the trenches. Our O-line has to come, and ready to battle, because this is what Pittsburgh runs. Schematically, they can run a 4-3 or they could do other things, but basically they line up man-to-man coverage, cover zero. They'll put a hat to a hat, and they'll send their best guys, which is their defensive line and their linebackers, to, rush the quarterback. So, yeah, just to start off naming some guys in the defensive line, they got monsters in their outside, man. They 6'5", 270 pounds. Rashad Weaver, 6 sacks, 17 hurries, 26 pressures, and 11 stops. That's a guy you got to look out for. And then if that wasn't, enough to tell you that their defensive line is good, then they got another guy by the name of Patrick Jones, who has 7 sacks and 8 hurries, 16 pressures, 14 stops. So these guys are very talented up front. I look for Miami to do kind of the same thing that Clemson did to us, maybe get the ball a little early, set some screens up to take advantage of these guys. Another thing Miami could do to beat these people is, guys, there's going to be people wide open, okay? The thing with Pittsburgh is they man up and they send everybody, and they're very similar to us in their style of play, which they tell our defensive linemen to attack the gaps. So there's going to be people open. Can we get those people the ball is a different story. So, we have to account for these guys, but not only do we have to account for these guys, De'Aaron King has to also be aware of this and take off early, and establish his presence as a runner. Another guy that I would mention is the defensive interior, a guy that's a freshman, and he's already made an impact, is Canty. Okay, he has 2 sacks, 10 tackles, 9 stops, and he ranks number 1 in the ACC for stopping runs. And, the amount of runs that he's faced, he ranks number 1. So this line is very deep and very good. So with that being said, we will see what turns out in the trenches from that. But we could go ahead and start talking about the linebackers if you want.
247 games, our running backs had nowhere to go against Clemson. Literally, they averaged a total. It wasn't even an average. All 3 of our running backs only had 11 rushing yards. A lot of people say Pittsburgh is going to stack the box against Miami. Are we going to have the same outcome running the football with our running backs that we saw against Clemson? Also, like you said perfectly, De'Aaron King at times, I would love for him to think run first instead of pass first. He moves the chains more effectively when he runs on his feet. I would love for him to be more aggressive. What are your thoughts on that?
I want him to be aggressive early. I also want to see Rhett Lashley get a little creative. But obviously, we can't be down 14-0 right away. We can't allow Pittsburgh to create some type of run game that they haven't had all year. So, diving a little bit more into this offensively for us, we have to be creative. We cannot commit penalties like false starts and put ourselves in a hole where it forces us to not be able to run the ball. So if we get a false start or a holding call on first down, now we're in first and long. Now we got, Pittsburgh is to an advantage. They could just pin their ears back, attack De'Aaron King, and then what do we got to do? We got to pass the ball to move it forward, so we become one-dimensional. So that's why I'm saying there can't be those critical mistakes that put us in a position where it affects our game plan. So we got to take advantage of all these situations and be creative. Get the ball to our playmakers in space, whether it's Jalen Knighton, whether it's Brevin Jordan, because they will be open. It's just a matter of, will we have enough time to give them the ball?
247.
And also,
wait, go for it.
I'm sorry. Also, just one more thing on the defensive line. For some reason, I've noticed this. I don't know if anybody else that's watched film on Pittsburgh's defensive line. Early on during the game, there has been cases of a lot of offsides or, just trying to get the cadence of the quarterback. So a hard count early on would be a smart thing to do to make these Pittsburgh defensive linemen think twice about jumping the count or anything, because I've seen it. It was the Louisville game, the NC State game, and a couple other games that I've seen. Early in the game, they just jump off sides, go to a hard count. So that's a tendency right there that we can take advantage. Those are free 5 yards. They're giving it to you. Now, can our offensive line be disciplined enough not to create a false start? I look forward to seeing that. A disciplined line that comes ready to play. We're at home. So it'll be a daunting task, but one that I look forward to.
How does Pittsburgh's linebacker core, how do they fare against Miami?
Okay, so their linebackers, they're really good against the run. They're really good blitzing linebackers, kind of the same thing as with Clemson. You got Pat Narduzzi sending guys to attack the quarterback. One of their linebackers that doesn't even start and makes an impact is a guy by the name of Servosea Dennis, okay? Once again, I'm not great at pronouncing names, so I apologize for that. But he accounts for 17 tackles, 14 stops, and 8 pressures. Another guy that's very effective, a linebacker called Cam Bright, 12 tackles, 3 sacks, 10 pressures, 11 stops. And I guess the person that I want to see us attack the most, okay, Cam Harris needs to go right at this guy, or Jalen Knighton, or anybody that's lined up and, one-on-one with this guy, which is Chase Pine, okay? He's their weakest linebacker. Don't take that as I'm saying he's weak. Just take it as he's their weakest link in that linebacking core, because he accounts for 7 missed tackles. So if there's a guy in their linebacking core that's questionable that we want to run at and we want to attack, that's the guy, okay? But we fare pretty well against them in terms of their linebackers, because I think that, like I said, we could exploit them if we could get the ball to our receivers or our running backs out of the backfield. especially if we swing out Cam Harris on a little pass. I'm more than confident that we could break some tackles.
That's great to hear. I mean, my opinion, our offense opens up when our run game develops. I think that was the strength of our offense. It's not throwing the football. It's De'Ara King's legs. It's Cam Harris and Jalen Knighton and Don Chaney adding to the success of King and Cam Harris. That's how our offense gets going. Then we utilize Brevin Jordan. That's our identity. It's not our wide receiver core. Speaking of our wide receiver core, I know there's been a lot of conversation regarding our wide receivers. A lot of people are not happy. How does Pittsburgh's cornerbacks look against our wide receivers in this game?
Look, our receivers are going to be open.
Okay.
Right, our receivers are going to be open. And I'm going to dive into this into detail and explain why. Okay. Look, they play man-to-man, right? Their strategy is basically get to the quarterback as quick as possible so that way they don't have to cover for that long. Their coverage is not that great. They'll match a hat with a hat where they'll put a safety on our tight end and another safety on our running back, and they'll just match up and cover zero, basically. So they're going to be open. Somebody's going to be open. We just got to find that person that's going to be open and give them just that slight time for De'Ara King to give them the ball, right? So obviously they will stack the box. They will try to stop our run game and force our receivers to beat them. I believe our receivers have the advantage. As much as people want to criticize a guy like Mark Pope, as much as they want to criticize Mike Harley, as much as they want to criticize D. Wiggins, we have the matchup advantage, okay? Jason Pinnock is one of their corners. He gave up 119 receiving yards and 2 touchdowns to Boston College, okay? That should tell you something right now. And the other one, which he's pretty good, is Marquise Williams, okay? He's been pretty consistent, and he's their version of Trajan Bandy. Why do I say Trajan Bandy? Guys, listen to this. He's 5'8", 175. 5'8", 175. He's a pretty good corner, but he's going to be lined up man-to-man. I hope they put him on D. Wiggins. I hope they put him on – I don't care who they put him on. We are going to have the physical advantage with him. And if we so happen just to get creative and figure out a way to get Will Mallory on the outside or match up to him, which I doubt that Pitt will allow that to happen, well, look out. I mean, that's going to be a mismatch all day. I mean, they're decent corners, but if they're playing man-to-man, our receivers should be able to win all day, every day. So if that doesn't get you excited or at least give you some hope that our receiving core is going to have a game this week, and I don't know what does. So we will see what happens from that.
I hope so. You know, we really need to gain confidence in our wide receiver core. I'm curious if Michael Redding, maybe we'll see more snaps with Jeremiah Payton, Xavier Restrepo, Keyshawn Smith. Will we see them more? I need someone to step up. I'm still waiting for that guy. I expected more from Mark Pope, Mike Harley, and D. Wiggins so far. The clock is ticking. Hey, let us know. If it's time to rebuild at wide receiver, hey, I'll take our losses. That's fine. I truly don't think that's what moves the offense is our passing game. I really think it's running the football. But, hey, I'll take our losses, and let's rebuild. Let's count on some underclassmen. But we'll find out who steps up against Pitt Saturday at noon. Last but not least, there's safeties. I think they have a very good safety in Paris Ford.
Yes, they do. And DeMar Hamlin as well. They're pretty good safeties. Okay, so if there's another position, you know, where you could count on them to cover people, it is their safeties. Paris Ford is their strong safety. He can play. He's so athletic. He can play free safety at the same time. He's 6 foot 190. He's good in coverage. He's a good run defender. But don't get me wrong, he's not a Bubba Bolden. Some analysts say that he's probably the best safety in the ACC. I would defer. I think it's Bubba Bolden strongly, but that's not the the title of this video, you know. But I've seen Paris Ford get knocked on his butt by a running back. So, you know, as long as you're physical with him, you can take him out of the game. I mean, he's going to be a playmaker. He's going to be everywhere on the field because he's just that type of guy for Pitt. And obviously, Pitt's D-line and linebackers attribute to hit the Paris Ford's success. But in my opinion, he's no Bubba Bolden, okay? Hamlin, okay, Damar Hamlin, I'm sorry, 6'1", 195. He gave up 84 yards receiving against Boston College. But he's a good run defender. So, you know, these guys have struggled. They're good, but they have struggled against Boston College, you know. So is Boston College a great receiving team? I'm not so sure about that from what I've seen. But that tells me that we have the ability to, you know, put our tight ends up against them and, you know, have something to say about that. And going back to the talk about our receivers, you know, whether it's a freshman, whether it's a underclassman or a senior or whatever it is, I just want to see our receivers make a play. I've seen Boston College. I've seen NC State. I've seen so many different receivers challenge for the ball while it's up in the air. I haven't seen that from our guys, and I know they're more incapable of doing it. So can we fight for those 50-50 balls? You know, we're sitting here criticizing because we're nitpicking everything that's gone wrong, but at the same time, our guys are more than capable of doing this. Why we haven't done it or why they haven't done it, I don't know. I don't know what's going on, but they have the ability to do it, and we should match up great against their safeties.
Before we get into score predictions, anything else you want to add regarding this game?
Yeah, I wanted to say a couple things. I don't know if you know this, but Pitt's third down defense is one of the best in the nation. So we have to convert on, you know, third down. Not only that, but we also have to, you know, finish our drives. We cannot come out flat. We cannot let them impose their will on defense, because if for whatever reason we start getting 3 and outs, we're going to start losing the field position battle. And knowing Pitt, you know, that's their strength. Defense is their strength. So if we start losing the position, the field position battle, it's not going to go in our favor. So we have to win the third down against Pitt.
247 Canes. The Miami Hurricanes go up against the Pittsburgh Panthers in Miami Gardens. They are favored by 13 points. What is your score prediction for the noon Saturday game on ACC Network?
Well, that's a great question. I don't know where you got that 13 from, but that's exactly what I was thinking, actually. Okay, awesome. So, but that's exactly what I have the score prediction at. I have Miami scoring 33 points, respectively so, and Pitt 20. I think our defense comes out to play. I think it's going to be evident that Pitt's run game is going to be of no factor. They're going to have to factor in some type of run game. And if we play defense the way we're supposed to, we win in the trenches and we limit Kenny Pickett and get to him, which if you go look back at last year's game, Pitt versus Miami, we should have killed them. But I'll reserve my comments from that because this is 2020.
Absolutely. You know, I'm going to go around there as well. I got Miami winning 34-17. I think that's fair. Like you said, man, we held them pretty easily last year. It was last year, though. This is a new year. Look, I'm not the biggest Kenny Pickett fan. I think we'll do fine. I think we have a complete mismatch with our defensive line, their offensive line. I think we should get to the quarterback. We're going to create a lot of turnovers. I'm very confident in our corners this game. Something I never say. I think our corners will have a good game in our secondary overall. And like you said, man, our wide receivers have the edge with their corners. The pass game, let's see if it opens up. Let's see. Maybe we'll see Michael Redding step up, get some more snaps, Keyshawn Smith, and I think our run game will open up as well. So, hey, I'm confident. I think we'll do fine. So I got 34-17. But, man, 247 Canes, thank you so much for coming on, man. You do a terrific job every time. And, hey, I might even name this title something about Paris Ford, just to throw that in
there. All right. So with that being said, all I got to say, my closing statement is go Canes, whoop that butt, and let's get back on the winning side of things.
I love it, man. Miami Hurricanes, Pittsburgh Panthers, noon, ACC Network. We'll see you guys then. Take care.